"You're not coming, Mom. It's a real family trip." My daughter, Janet, said those words, and the phrase real family hit me hard. I sat there, 74 years old, with my hands folded and a polite smile on my face. Her husband, Aaron, agreed, and my grandchildren looked at their plates. I didn't say a word. I just drove home in my quiet, old car. The radio stayed off. My old car shook a little on the highway as my town, Wilmington, got further away. I had lived there since 1969. My hands gripped the steering wheel too tightly. When I got home, I went to the kitchen and made tea, but I didn't drink it. The kettle had whistled and then gone quiet a long time ago. They were going to Sicily, a 12-day trip with a beautiful house, a swimming pool, dinners by the sea, horseback riding for the kids, and wine tasting for the adults. I knew all of this because I had seen the plan. The bill for the trip had come to my email by mistake. Or maybe they had just forgotten to take my name off the list after using my credit card. I was listed as the main person for the booking. That was last month. "Mom," Janet had said then, "could you help us book something special for the kids? A family experience. They'll remember it forever." Of course, I had said yes. I always did. Just like I had helped them pay their house loan, buy a minivan, pay for my grandson Ben's braces, pay for my granddaughter Emma's dance school, and pay for Janet's real estate license. I closed my laptop that night and sat in the dark. The only sound was the slow ticking of the old clock on the wall. They were leaving in 5 days, and I was not family. I picked up my phone, not to call Janet, not to argue. I opened my bank app instead. Tomorrow I would call the bank. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the cracks in the ceiling. The room felt colder than normal, even though it was July. I pulled up the quilt my mother made years ago. The edges were worn, but the weight of it was comforting. In the morning, I sat by the window with my coffee, watching the neighborhood wake up. The world went on, not caring about my sadness. I thought about Janet and how she had changed over the years. At first, she would say, "Mom, I don't know how we'd get by without you." Later, it became, "Mom, it would mean so much if you could help just this one time." Then, "Mom, this is just how things are now." But I remembered how it used to be. When she was 3, she wouldn't go to sleep unless I sang her a silly song about a fox. When she was 8 and afraid of the dark, I put glowing stars on her ceiling and told her they were her guardians. When she was 12 and her best friend moved away, she cried in my lap for hours. When she was 16 and failed her driving test, I drove her through the same parking lot every day until she passed. Her father, Charlie, had died of a heart attack when she was 11. It was quick, they said, unexpected. After that, I worked 2 jobs, one cleaning offices at night and one at the grocery store during the day. I saved every penny I could. I bought this house with the insurance money from my husband. I paid off Janet's college loans myself. She never asked me to, but it was what mothers did. When she married Aaron, I gave them a check for $25,000, which was all of my emergency money. She cried and said she would pay me back. Of course, she didn't. That wasn't the point. Over the years, I started to feel less important in her life. It wasn't all at once, just slowly. Fewer visits, shorter phone calls, conversations that didn't go very deep. When I offered to watch the kids, she said yes with relief, but never with a feeling of being happy to see me. Still, I stayed quiet. I told myself she was busy. I told myself she loved me in her own way. That being a family was complicated. That maybe I was asking for too much. But when someone tells you that you are not part of the real family, it makes everything from the past and present seem very sharp and clear. I took out a folder from the bottom drawer of the sideboard. In it were all the paid bills, the receipts, the email from the travel company, the bill for the house in Sicily, the plane tickets, the tours, the car rental. Every single thing was charged to my credit card, quietly, as if it was a normal thing. I put them in a neat pile on the kitchen table. Then I picked up the phone. It was time to call the bank. "Mrs. Sanders, good morning," said the voice on the phone. "This is Dana from Pacific Horizon Bank. How can I help you today?" Her voice was cheerful and organized. She didn't know I had been awake since 4 a.m, sitting at my kitchen table in my robe, with my second cup of coffee getting cold. "Dana," I said slowly, "I need to talk to someone about canceling some payments. Payments that are for travel." There was a short pause. I could imagine her looking at my account on her computer and seeing the big numbers. "Yes, of course. I can help with that. Are you talking about the recent charges to Ital Vista Travel Group?" "Yes," I said. "All of them." Another pause. She was trying to sound professional. "That is a very large amount of money, Mrs. Sanders. May I ask, are you saying the charges are wrong, or do you want to cancel them?" "Cancel them." "I see. Just a moment while I check which ones can be canceled." I waited. My eyes looked around the living room. The old couch. The picture of Charlie and me on the porch with baby Janet. A worn-out handmade blanket on the armrest. Dana came back on the phone. "All right, here's what I see. The house booking can be canceled with a 10% fee. The plane tickets have a cancellation window, but there's a fee. The tours and the car rental can be fully canceled." "Shall I cancel all of them?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "All of them." "Very well. I will start the cancellation requests now. You will get an email about each one. The money with the fees taken out will come back to your account in 5 to 7 business days." "Thank you," I said. Then, as a last thought, I added, "Can you also make a note that no more payments can be made to that company without me giving permission?" "Certainly." We ended the call politely, like two strangers finishing a business deal. But for me, it was something else entirely. I put the phone down and looked at the neat pile of papers again. $14,880 for a vacation. A vacation I was not invited to. They would be flying out in 4 days. They didn't know yet that nothing was booked anymore. I looked at the clock. It was 11:43 a.m. By now, Janet was probably at lunch with her coworkers, drinking a cold green drink and laughing about something her youngest child had said. She wouldn't check the travel app until later. Maybe that evening. Maybe not until she got to the airport. I didn't care. This wasn't about revenge. It was about making things right, about getting my balance back. That night, I heated up soup I had made 2 days before. I took out my good plates and silverware, just for myself. I poured a small glass of red wine and lit a candle. I ate alone at the dining table, slowly, carefully, and for the first time in a very long time, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't tell anyone what I had done. Not yet. There was a quiet feeling in the house the next morning, as if the house itself was holding its breath. I moved through it quietly, as if my silence could make the peace last a little longer. I fed the cat, watered the plants by the front windows, and opened the curtains to let in the hot light of Wilmington. My phone buzzed at around 10 o'clock. It was a group text from Janet. "Don't forget Sicily in 3 days. Emma, did you pack your white sandals? Ben, your passport is in the kitchen drawer. Aaron, you are taking care of the rental car this time." The message was full of happy energy, little smiling pictures, the rhythm of a family. I was not part of the planning, of course. I was only in that group text because years ago Janet had added me, so I would feel included. Now it was just a window into a world I no longer belonged to. I looked at the message for a moment, then put the phone face down on the table. The irony didn't hurt, as much as I had expected it to. I had canceled the trip less than 24 hours ago, and they were still getting ready for it, as if it was a sure thing. I felt a strange sense of calm watching their excitement. I knew something they didn't, and that made all the difference. Later that day, I went into town. I needed eggs, and I wanted to get some envelopes from the store. I felt a new energy in my step. I parked my car and walked past the bakery, where Charlie used to buy cinnamon rolls for us on Sunday mornings. It had the same sign in the window, the same sweet smell on the sidewalk. In the store, I found the envelopes I needed. Heavy, cream-colored, the good kind. I didn't need them for anything right away. I just wanted to write again. Maybe letters, maybe a list of things I still wanted to do. At the checkout, the cashier smiled. "Doing some mailing today?" Eventually, I said, "Some things take time." When I got back home, there was a message waiting for me on the phone. I pressed play, my heart already feeling calm. "Hi, Mom. Just checking in. We're trying to finalize a few things with the travel company, but we keep getting an error message on the website. Weird problem, I guess. I know you helped with the booking, so I was wondering if you had gotten any emails. Anyway, call me when you can." Her voice was casual and a little distracted, as if we were just two teammates working on a problem, as if she hadn't said what she had said, as if she hadn't left me out. I didn't call back. Instead, I made a small pot of tea and took it out to the porch. The heat was heavy, but the shade from the old dogwood tree made it bearable. I rocked gently, watching the street. A man walked by with a baby stroller. A woman ran past with her golden retriever. Two teenage boys rode their bikes too fast down the hill, making noise. At some point, I remembered something Janet had said years ago. We were in the backyard after a barbecue. She had just put Emma to bed. Her wine glass was almost empty. "You know, Mom," she had said, "sometimes I wonder what my life would have been like if I didn't have you around." Not in a bad way. I mean, just if I had to figure things out alone. At the time, I thought it was a compliment, that I had been her safety net. Now, I saw the other side of it. She had never had to figure anything out on her own. Not really. Not the money, not the plans, not the results of her actions. I was always there, not seen, always reliable, always willing to help. A shadow behind her. Not anymore. That evening, I got 3 more messages. 2 from her, 1 from Aaron. They were short and getting more worried, asking about the booking, the credit card, the website. One even had a picture of a red error message on the screen. I didn't answer. By the time it was dark, I knew the questions would turn to phone calls, maybe even a visit. And when they did, I would be ready. But tonight, I poured another glass of wine and, for the first time in years, wrote a letter to myself. "Dear Mabel, well done." The first phone call came at 7:18 the next morning. I was in the garden, still in my nightgown, pulling weeds from the flower bed. My phone rang in the kitchen, and I let it ring. Then it rang again and again. When I finally walked in with bare feet and a little sweat, there were 6 missed calls. 3 from Janet, 1 from Aaron, 1 from Emma's dance school, and 1 from a number I didn't know. I made toast, put butter on it, and ate it while standing by the sink. Then the phone buzzed again. This time it was a text. "Mom, what's going on?" "The villa booking is gone." "Did you cancel it?" "Call me." The tone had changed. The smiling pictures were gone. I washed my plate and dried my hands on a towel. Then I sat down, wrote a text message, and deleted it. I did this 4 times. Finally, I wrote, "Yes, I canceled it. Since I wasn't family, I assumed my money wasn't needed." I hit send and put the phone down. No long explanation, no apology, just the truth. The reply came quickly. "Janet, what the heck are you talking about? This affects all of us. The kids are heartbroken." How could you be so mean? Mean. That word went around in my mind as I poured a second cup of coffee. Was it mean to take back my own money? Was it mean to say, I will no longer be left out of the things I pay for? Was it mean to stop pretending I didn't hear the things they said when they thought I wouldn't do anything? The phone rang again. This time I answered. Mom. Her voice was sharp and angry. What did you do? I canceled the bookings. I said calmly, the villa, the flights, the tours, everything. But why? You said you would help. You said it was for the kids. No, I said, you said it was for the kids. I said I would pay for a family trip. And then you told me I wasn't family. There was a long silence. Then she made a sound like she was scoffing. You're twisting things. I didn't mean it like that. You always do this. Always make everything about you. I closed my eyes and let out a long breath. I'm 74 years old. Janet, I said, I have been quiet for a long time. I have paid for more things than you will ever know. I have taken the small bits of your time and pretended they were love. You don't get to change the rules now just because they are not working for you. She was quiet again. Then I heard her real voice, the one under the angry one. We told the kids, Mom. We showed them pictures. Ben was so excited about the horses. Emma made a packing list. What am I supposed to tell them now? I almost felt like giving in. Almost. But I remembered something. 2 months ago, after Emma's dance show, Janet had taken pictures with everyone. Aaron, his parents, her parents-in-law, even the dance teacher. I stood by the door, waiting. She didn't wave me over. When I asked later, gently, if she had gotten a picture with me, she said, Oh, I think Aaron's mom did. I'll ask her to send it. She never did. So I said, now tell them the truth, that you made choices and choices have results. She hung up. That afternoon, Aaron came to the door. He knocked loudly. He was wearing dark sunglasses. I didn't open the door. He left after a few minutes, but not before saying something I couldn't hear through the glass. It didn't matter. I was done with the noise. Done with people who only remembered I existed when their plans were in trouble. Later that night, I lit a candle on the porch. The sun was low, and the air was thick with summer heat. Somewhere far away, children were laughing. I thought about what I would do with the money. Not the money itself. That wasn't important. The power of it, the decision, the getting back of my own place. Tomorrow, I would call the lawyer. There were papers to look at, accounts to change. The ground had been shaken, and now I would build it again on my own terms. It's strange, the quiet that comes after a fight. It's not like peace, more like the silence after an earthquake, when the dust is still in the air and the walls haven't decided if they will stand or fall. The day after Aaron came to the door, I heard nothing. No text messages, no voicemails, no knocks. Not even a drive-by from Emma, who often rode her bike past the house. I should have felt like I had won, or felt relieved, but I just felt something else. Space. Not empty space, just a lot of it, like a room I had always been pushed into suddenly had windows. By the middle of the afternoon, I finally turned my phone back on. There was only one new message. Ben. My grandson, Ben. He was 12. Grandma, are you mad at Mom? What happened to the trip? That was it. 12 words that hurt more than anything else. I sat down on the couch, the phone in my lap, my fingers over the screen. What could I say to a child? A child who didn't understand that love wasn't about trips to a fun place or plane tickets. I wrote and deleted a dozen answers before I finally wrote, I'm not mad at anyone, sweetheart. Sometimes grown-ups make decisions, and they are not always easy. I love you very much. He didn't write back. I didn't expect him to. I put the phone away and went to the garage where I kept an old box of photos and papers. Janet never liked the garage. She said it smelled of dust and old memories, but I had always found it comforting. It was where Charlie kept his fishing gear, where we stored the Christmas decorations, where time felt honest. I pulled the box into the house and opened it. Inside were my wedding photos, Janet's birth certificate, old school reports, bills from the early years, the first baby bed, the nightgown I bought after Charlie died, the envelope from her first paycheck, the one she had proudly given me when she was 19, saying she would take me out for dinner with it. I had kept it. The ink had faded, but the memory hadn't. There were also letters, one from her after a breakup in college, telling me I was the only person who understood her. Another from a school trip when she was 8, signed, "Your best friend always." I looked at them for a long time. I wondered what had changed and when. The answer didn't come. Only a feeling of deep emptiness that no amount of money could fill. By evening, I had made a decision. Not out of anger, not to punish them, but because some boundaries once crossed need to be drawn again with a permanent marker. I called my bank first and asked to set up a meeting in person. I wanted to make sure all my accounts were safe, that no one else had access. I had given Janet limited access years ago for emergencies. I told myself she had never used it in a bad way, but she had come close. Now I wanted it gone. Then I called Martin Sharp, my lawyer. He was a polite, quiet man who had handled Charlie's will and helped me when I got a new loan for the house. "Martin," I said, "I need to make changes to everything." His voice was steady. "Of course, Mrs. Sanders. When would you like to come in?" "Tomorrow. Would you like to talk about anything before you come?" "Yes," I said. "I'd like to set up a trust for my granddaughter, Emma." There was a short pause. "Not for your daughter?" "No." I heard him moving papers. His voice became professional again. "Very well. I will prepare the first documents. We'll go through them together." "Thank you, Martin." After I hung up, I sat in the kitchen with the last bit of sunlight hitting the floor. I let it warm my feet. It was not a moment of winning. It was a moment of truth. I didn't want to punish anyone. I just wanted to protect the little I had left. My peace, my voice, my worth. And if that meant drawing boundaries that were big, clear, and undeniable, then so be it. Tomorrow, I would write my name beside them. The bank lobby was cool and quiet when I walked in the next morning. It smelled of air freshener and printer ink. I had worn my best pants and a nice shirt I hadn't worn in years. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to feel strong, to feel present, not like some invisible woman hiding from the world. Dana, the bank worker I had spoken with on the phone, knew me right away. "Mrs. Sanders," she said, standing up quickly, "we have a room ready for you." She led me into a small office with glass walls and a nice table. She pulled up my information on her screen while I sat down. I have marked all the recent payments to Ital Vista Travel and confirmed that all the pending charges have been stopped. The money with the fees taken out is on its way back to your account. I nodded. Good. I would also like to take away any and all people who are authorized on my accounts. Dana looked up. "Including your daughter?" "Especially my daughter." She didn't get upset. She just nodded once and started typing. Her fingers moved fast. She had seen enough to know when not to ask questions. "I would also like to move a portion of the money into a new trust account under the name of my granddaughter, Emma Corrine Wallace. She's 15. Dana paused and looked at me carefully. "Do you want that to be available right away, or when she is a certain age?" I thought about it. 18, I said, "but I want to leave a condition. She has to write me a letter. Not a legal paper, but just something real. Something that says what she wants to do with her life, even if she changes her mind later." Dana smiled softly. "We can make that happen." While she finished the paperwork, I sat there, looking out the window at the bank's waiting area. A young couple was there, with a baby. The mother was gently bouncing the baby on her knee, while the father looked at something on his phone. They looked tired, but they were together. I wondered what it would be like to have that again. A family that pulled you in instead of pushing you away. An hour later, everything was signed. My accounts were safe. Access was taken away. The trust was created. It was done. Outside, the July air wrapped around me like a blanket I hadn't asked for. It was too warm and a little sticky, but I welcomed it. It was real. Next was Martin's office, 2 blocks away in an old plain building. The receptionist offered me water, then led me in. Martin stood up when I entered. "Mrs. Sanders, please come in." He looked the same as always. Thin hair, brown tie, glasses that always slid down his nose a little. We went through the will. I crossed out names, changed the amounts, added Emma's name very clearly, and I added one final condition. No claim or challenge from other family members will be accepted without a personal handwritten letter submitted while I am alive. Martin raised an eyebrow at that. "They will have time to explain themselves," I said, simply, "while it still matters." He nodded. When I left, I didn't feel like I had won. I felt tired, but it was the kind of tiredness that comes after doing something necessary, like chopping wood or cleaning out a closet you have been avoiding for years. Back home, I made myself a sandwich and sat on the porch. The phone buzzed on the table next to me, but I didn't look. Somewhere inside, I felt something loosen. Not joy, not revenge, just a small taking back of space. My own voice. The next morning, I found a letter in my mailbox. It wasn't in an envelope, just a piece of paper folded in half with my name, Grandma, written on top in blue pen. It was Emma's handwriting. I stood at the mailbox for a moment before I opened it. The sun was already high, and the air was thick and slow. A bird was on the fence, singing as if it knew something I didn't. Inside, the note was simple. "Grandma, Mom, and Dad are freaking out. They say we're not going on the trip anymore because of something you did. I don't know what happened. I just know I miss you. I didn't ask them to leave you out. I thought you didn't want to come. That's what they told us. I love you. Please call me. Emma." I sat down on the porch step, the paper shaking in my hands. They told her I didn't want to come. Of course they did. It was easier than telling the truth, that they had made a choice to leave me out, and now the consequences were ruining their perfect plans. I went inside, poured myself a glass of water, and stared at the note for a long time. She was just a girl, not completely innocent. She saw more than they thought, but she was still learning who to trust. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. Not Janet's, not the house phone, Emma's. She answered on the first ring. "Grandma." "Hi, baby," I said, my voice a little weaker than I wanted it to be. "I got your note." "Are you okay?" she asked quickly. "Are you mad?" "No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. I'm just sad. Sad that things were said that shouldn't have been, and sad that you were caught in the middle." There was a long silence. "They told us you didn't want to come," she said, her voice almost a whisper. I didn't believe it. "Not really." "You were right not to." More silence. Then, "I really wanted you there. I wanted to show you the sea turtles. I wanted to sit on the balcony and drink hot chocolate like we did that time in Georgia." I smiled, even though my eyes were wet. "I wanted that too," I said, "more than you know." "Can't we still go?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Just you and me?" My throat felt tight. "We'll find our own trip," I said gently, "one where no one gets to decide who belongs." She made a small sound like a sob. "Mom's going to be so mad that I called." She might, but sometimes doing what's right means making people angry. especially people who are used to being in charge. I heard footsteps in the background, quiet voices. "I have to go," Emma whispered. "But thank you for calling. I love you. I love you too, honey. Always." She hung up. I put the phone down and stared out the window. That call had changed something. Not everything, but something. Emma had reached across the line, and I had answered. Later that day, Janet texted again. "Unbelievable. Manipulating your granddaughter, now. You are seriously crossing a line." I didn't reply because for once, I wasn't just reacting. I was making a choice, and I had no intention of going back. She came in the late afternoon. I heard her car before I saw it. It was going too fast down our quiet street, the tires making a noise on the gravel. She didn't park in the driveway like she used to. She pulled up crookedly at the side of the road, the engine running for a moment before she finally shut it off. I watched from the kitchen window as she got out, slammed the car door, and stood there as if she was deciding whether to come in or just leave. She didn't knock. She let herself in with the key I had given her years ago, the one I had forgotten she still had. I didn't move. She walked straight into the kitchen where I was washing lettuce from the garden and put her sunglasses on the counter with a loud sound. "I want to talk," she said. I turned off the water and faced her. "Then talk." She was already starting her speech, the one she had probably practiced in the car. "I can't believe you would ruin something like this. Do you have any idea how much this trip meant to the kids, to Aaron and me? It was the first time in 5 years we were going to take a real vacation. And you told me I wasn't family," I said, my voice calm and steady. Her mouth opened, then closed. "I didn't mean it like that." "But you said it." I was angry. I was tired. "You always make everything a big deal." "No," I said. "What I did was finally stop paying for a life I'm not allowed to be a part of." She crossed her arms. "This is about money, then. That's what it always comes down to." "No," I said again. "It's about respect, about being spoken to like a person, about not being erased." She looked away toward the fridge, as if she was searching for a neutral object to look at. "I never asked you to pay for anything," she mumbled. "You never had to," I replied. It was just expected. Every request came with a feeling of guilt or a feeling of silence. Either way, I delivered. She shook her head. "You're being so dramatic. We could have talked about this. We still can. But not like this. Not with you punishing everyone. Is that what you think this is?" I asked. "A punishment? Emma is heartbroken. Ben is confused. Aaron is furious. You've created a mess. And for what? To prove a point." "No," I said, "to stop disappearing." That stopped her. She didn't speak for a long time. Then finally, quieter. "You've been holding this in for a long time." I nodded. "Too long." She ran her hands through her hair. She looked tired now. Not angry, just worn out. "What do you want me to say?" she asked. "That I'm sorry? That I messed up?" I tilted my head. That would be a start. She sat down at the kitchen table as if her legs had given out. I stayed standing. "You could have talked to me," she said again, softer this time. "Instead of destroying everything." I let out a long breath. "I talked to you for 20 years, Janet, with my time, with my money, with my silence. I talked until there was nothing left in me to say. Now I'm done talking." She looked up at me, and for a second I saw the little girl again, the one with scraped knees and eyes that were too big for her face. Then it was gone. "You really cut me out of everything?" she asked. "The accounts, the will, all of it?" I nodded. "And I'll be looking at the title for the beach house next." She flinched as if I had hit her. That place was for the kids. And now it will be for the one who remembers who paid for the ground under their feet. Her jaw tightened. We sat in silence for a while, a clock ticking somewhere in the hall, her unfinished apology hanging in the air between us like laundry on a clothesline no one wanted to fold. Then she stood. "Okay," she said. "I got the message." She picked up her sunglasses, walked to the door, and paused. "You always said you didn't want to die alone," she said without turning around. I took a breath, steady and even. "I still don't," I said, "but I'd rather be alone than be invisible." And then the door closed behind her. That night, the house was still, not the kind of silence that hurts, but the kind that breathes, steady, real. Mine. I sat by the window in the armchair Charlie used to sit in, the one with the worn arms and a cushion that still held the shape of his back. A cup of tea was on the windowsill. The street outside was dark except for the soft light from a porch across the road and the occasional passing car. I wasn't waiting for another fight. Not tonight. Janet wouldn't be back. I knew her well enough to know that when she left like that, with her back straight and her words still angry, she wouldn't return until she could control the situation again. And that door was closed now. Tomorrow I had another meeting, one I had put off for too long. The next morning, I stood in front of the office of a man named Thomas Brandt, a lawyer who deals with property. The building was newer than Martin's, made of glass and steel with plants by the door. I had called ahead to ask if he handled property title transfers and changes to ownership. He did. When I walked into his office, Thomas was warm and respectful. He was younger than I had expected, maybe in his late 30s, with a calm gaze. He offered me water. I said no. "I want to look at the current title for a beach house in Beaufort County." I said, "It's in my name, but there are plans for it to go to my daughter after I pass away." He looked at some notes. "We can definitely take a look. If you are thinking of changing who gets it or putting it into a trust, there are a few ways we can do that. I want to remove the plan for it to go to my daughter completely," I said, "and I want to make sure that the property can't be inherited by anyone who isn't specifically named in my trust." He looked up once, then nodded. "All right," he said. "I'll prepare the new document." We worked in silence for a few minutes. I answered questions, confirmed numbers, looked at tax papers. When it was done, he printed the new documents and handed me the pen. "I'll need to make it official," he said gently. "Are you sure you want to do this?" I looked at the line where I had to sign, the pen feeling heavy in my hand. "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. I signed the papers for the house. The same house they all begged to borrow every summer. The same house I paid for with the last of my savings. It was no longer promised to the people who had treated me like a piece of furniture, not a person. It would go to Emma if, and only if she wanted it. If, and only if she understood the history it carried. After I left, I stopped at a small bookstore I used to visit when Janet was a little girl. The owner, a woman named Claire, was still there. We had known each other once when we were both young mothers. I bought a notebook, a thick one bound in dark green cloth. Back home, I made lunch. Real lunch. Baked chicken thighs, rice with lemon and herbs, a little salad. I set the table for one and ate it all slowly. Then I sat down with the notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "For Emma, if one day you want to know why I made the choices I did, read this." It wasn't about blaming anyone. It wasn't a list of complaints. It was a map. Through the slow disappearance of love, the silences, the times they were not there, the small embarrassments, and through the good times, too. The days I still remember with love. A legacy not of money, but of truth. By the time the sun went down, I had filled 5 pages. The phone rang once. Aaron. I let it go to voicemail. I wasn't done writing. I spent the next 2 days in quiet motion, not hiding, just getting my things in order. It felt like cleaning out an attic where you had stored too much for too long. Every drawer I opened, every cabinet I cleaned seemed to whisper the same thing. You don't need to carry this anymore. On Thursday morning, I pulled out an old, heavy box from the hall closet. Inside were things from Janet's childhood, her first ballet shoes, a chipped ceramic turtle she made in third grade, a faded friendship bracelet still tied in a knot. For years, I couldn't bring myself to get rid of any of it. I kept thinking one day she would want to look through it with me, laugh about the memories, maybe take something home. She never did. So I sat with that box in my lap, pulled out each item, and asked myself, do I need this to remember her? One by one, I let them go. The house began to feel lighter, with more air, as if it had been holding its own breath all this time, waiting for me to make a choice. And I had. That evening, the phone rang again. I didn't know the number, but I answered anyway. Grandma? It was Emma's voice, quiet but clear. Hi, sweetheart. A pause. Can I come over? My heart felt a little tight. Are you sure your mom is okay with that? I didn't ask, she said. I need to see you. 10 minutes later, she was at the door. She looked older than 15. Maybe it was the way her mouth was set or the way her backpack hung from one shoulder as if she was already carrying too much. I made tea. She didn't want any. She just sat at the kitchen table, biting her lip and pulling at a loose thread on her sleeve. I think I understand now, she said. Why you did what you did. I didn't say anything. I asked Mom why you canceled the trip. She went on. She said you were trying to teach us a lesson, that you wanted to embarrass her. Emma looked up, her eyes searching mine. But I think you were just tired of pretending. I nodded slowly. That's exactly it. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a spiral notebook. I started writing you a letter. You said I had to write one for the trust. I don't know if it counts yet, but I wanted to show you I was thinking about it. I took the notebook from her, careful not to rush. The first page was messy, with words scribbled out, but I could see the effort in every line. She hadn't been told to do this. She chose it herself. We sat in silence for a long time. The quiet was full, not heavy. Then she asked, Are you going to forgive Mom? I took a breath. I've been asking myself that. I said, and the truth is, forgiving someone doesn't always mean opening the door again. Sometimes it just means letting go of the hurt. Emma looked down, nodding. You're not responsible for any of this. I added gently, none of what has happened is your problem to carry. She blinked quickly, then reached for my hand. I don't want us to stop being family, she whispered. We won't, I said, but from now on, it will be the kind that is chosen, not just assigned. Later, when I walked her to the door, she turned and hugged me hard. Not the polite kind of hug teenagers give out of habit, but one that said, I see you. And for the first time in years, I let myself cry. Not because I was broken, but because something was finally starting to heal. Friday morning came with a softness that surprised me. The sky was gray. Light came in gently through the windows. And for the first time in weeks, I woke up without the heavy feeling of dread in my chest. I made breakfast slowly. Eggs, toast, real butter. No rush, no plan, just time and quiet. My phone buzzed at 9:42 a.m. It was a message on the voicemail. No ringtone. I had silenced Janet's number days ago. Still, I was curious. I played it back while washing dishes. Mom, I know you don't want to hear from me, but I'm asking you to think about what you're doing. You've always been the bigger person. You've always been better than this. I don't understand why you're throwing everything away over one bad moment. Emma came home crying. She thinks you hate us. Please, can we just sit down and talk? Her voice broke near the end. That familiar high sound she used when her feelings started to show through her control. I dried my hands on the towel and looked out the window. The street was still. A bluebird hopped along the fence. I didn't call her back. not because I was angry, but because I had already sat down. I had already talked for years. That afternoon, I went to the post office. I had 2 envelopes to mail, both full of papers. One for Martin with my final sign changes, and one for Emma with a handwritten note and the first few pages copied from my green notebook. Dearest Emma, this is not a story of pain, although you may read it that way at first. It's a story of remembering, of returning to myself. You may not agree with everything I have done. That's okay, but I hope you'll understand why it was important that I did it. With all my love, Grandma. I put the envelopes on the counter and paid to have them sent quickly. Sending something important, the clerk asked kindly. Yes, I said. Very. Back home, I found myself looking at the living room bookshelf. I hadn't touched it in a long time. Among the cookbooks and gardening books, there were old stories, photo albums, and a few small boxes. I pulled one down and opened it. Inside, Charlie's old watch, still ticking after all these years. A dried rose from our 25th wedding anniversary dinner, and a note in his handwriting, folded in half and stained with age. I had forgotten it existed. Mabel, you give and give and give. One day, I hope someone sees the cost. Love, C. I sat on the couch and held the note in both hands. He had seen me back then, when no one else did. That evening, I walked through the house slowly, touching walls, moving a few pictures, folding a blanket over the back of the couch. It was a kind of getting ready, a quiet readiness. At sunset, I lit a candle. Then I pulled out a map. The last thing I did that night was circle a small town on the coast that I hadn't been to in 30 years. I wasn't running away. I was choosing. And this time, the trip would be mine alone. The suitcase I took from the attic was older than Emma. It was a strong, dark blue suitcase with a zipper that would get stuck if you pulled it too fast. It still had the old airport tag from our trip to Charleston in 1997. Charlie had packed it back then, carefully rolling my sweaters as if they were precious. I dusted it off, laid it open on the bed, and started to pack. Not a lot, just enough. 2 cotton dresses, comfortable shoes, my favorite sweater, which was soft from age, but still warm. A big hat, the green notebook. No one knew I was going. I hadn't told Janet, not because I wanted to keep it a secret. I was simply done making announcements to people who didn't listen. By the middle of the morning, I was at the train station. The platform in Wilmington isn't much, just a long stretch of concrete with a tired bench and a vending machine that always takes your money. But the train came on time. The sound of its horn was low and echoed across the tracks like an old friend clearing his throat. I got on slowly, found a seat by the window, and sat down. The person who checked the tickets nodded politely as they walked by. As the train left, I watched the town disappear. The diner where we used to get milkshakes after church on Sundays. The bookstore Janet loved as a little girl. The park where I once sat for 4 hours at Emma's 3rd grade softball game. My town, my past, was getting smaller, softer, not gone, just moving into the background. The rhythm of the train made me feel calm. It was steady and predictable. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. Whatever message Janet had waiting for me, an apology, another plea, or more silence, it could wait. She had her choices. I had mine. I opened the green notebook again and wrote one more line under yesterday's entry. Today I left, not because I was pushed, but because I finally knew the way forward. The view outside the window became greener as we went. Trees gave way to open fields. The air seemed different, more free. I thought about Charlie, how he always wanted us to take a long road trip down the coast after he retired. We never did. Life got in the way. Or maybe we just forgot to choose it while we still could. So I chose it now. This wasn't a vacation. Not really. It was a restoration, a way to hear my own thoughts again, without the noise of things I had to do. A chance to sit with the woman I used to be, the one who once believed she would matter, even without her money open or her voice quiet. Somewhere, a little boy across the aisle turned to me and asked, "Are you going home?" I smiled. "No," I said, "but I think I'm getting closer." The train let me off in a town, so small it didn't even have a real station, just a wooden platform and a metal sign that said, Bay Haven. I stepped down onto the gravel with my suitcase and was hit by the smell of salt, sun, and something sweet and old in the way only the air by the sea can be. I hadn't been here in over 30 years. Bay Haven was where Charlie and I had once spent a weekend in a small house we rented a long time before Janet was born, a long time before the silent sadness and the small resentments. Just the two of us by the ocean. He had lost his wedding ring in the waves, and we had laughed about it until the sky turned pink. I found a small inn at the edge of town. It was called the Wren's Nest. It was 2 stories tall and painted a light green color with white chairs on the porch. A bell above the door made a sound like a question. "Here for the writer's retreat?" The woman at the front desk asked, looking at my notebook. "No," I said, smiling. "Just here to remember how to be alone." She blinked, then nodded as if that made perfect sense. I paid with cash and asked for a room that faced west. That first night, I didn't unpack. I opened all the windows, turned off the fan, and let the ocean breeze move the curtains like a restless guest. I sat on the bed, watching the sun go down behind the trees, my feet bare, the old floorboards cool under them. And for the first time in what felt like years, I was not preparing myself for anything. No phone calls, no expectations, just breath, space, and the quiet sound of being. The next day, I walked. Bay Haven had changed. There were new stores, more visitors, but the old parts were still there. The pier with its paint coming off, the ice cream shop by the water, the bench where Charlie and I had once shared fried seafood wrapped in brown paper. I stopped at a cafe for lunch, grilled fish and sweet tea. The waiter looked about Emma's age. He called me ma'am and brought extra lemon slices without me asking. When I went to pay, I paused, then asked if they sold gift cards. He nodded. "Sure, any amount." $100. I said, "Put the name Emma Wallace on it." He wrote it down. "Special occasion?" he asked. "No," I said, "just thinking of someone I love." I mailed it from the tiny post office down the street. No note, just the card and a receipt. That evening, back at the inn, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my legs and the notebook in my lap. I didn't write much, just one sentence. I am not where I was, but I am no longer where they left me. It wasn't poetry, but it was true. Around midnight, I woke up to thunder. It wasn't loud, but it was close. The kind of sound that sounds like someone dragging furniture across the clouds. I went to the window. Rain tapped the glass gently, as if it was trying to get in. I made tea in the small kitchen and drank it while standing at the sink, wrapped in a towel, my hair still a little wet from my walk on the beach earlier. The phone on the nightstand buzzed once. I checked it. It was a photo from Emma. She was standing in the kitchen back home. Her face was full of surprise. No words, just that smile. The kind of smile that said, "I know this was from you, and I love you for it." My chest felt tight, not with sadness, but with something softer, something I hadn't let myself feel in a long time. Hope. I wrote back with a heart. Just one, then I turned the phone off again. The rain kept falling, and I let it. I stayed in Bay Haven for 6 more days. Every morning I walked to the beach with my shoes in my hand and let the sea greet me without asking questions. The tide was always different, but the rhythm was constant. Water in, water out. It reminded me of something I had forgotten, that letting go is a process, not a single act. On the last morning, I packed slowly, folding each piece of clothing with care. Not because I was returning to a certain life, but because I was ready to live differently. The green notebook was heavier now, its pages full, each line a small restoration. I left it on the nightstand for a moment while I sat by the window. One last look at the shoreline disappearing into the fog. The train ride back was quiet. I read, fell asleep, and watched the view outside change from the coast to fields to suburbs. When I got home, the house greeted me with its usual sounds. But it no longer felt like a waiting room. It felt lived in again. Mine. In the weeks that followed, Janet didn't contact me. Not on my birthday. Not after Emma told her about the trust. Not after Aaron's cousin saw me at the hardware store buying paint for the sunroom. And I didn't chase her. Emma came once a week, sometimes with questions, sometimes just to sit. She brought cookies she had baked herself, her math homework, and once a list of places she wanted to see with someone who actually noticed things. We picked one. Charleston next spring. You promise? She asked. I do. Martin sent the final legal papers to me. I signed them without a second thought. No big celebration, no big moment. Just a quiet, firm signature. Dana from the bank called to confirm the last transfer. You're all set, Mrs. Sanders. Everything is just how you asked. Good, I said. That's how it should be. One evening, I sat on the porch, tea in hand, and watched the neighborhood get dark. A couple walked past, holding hands, talking quietly about what to have for dinner. A teenager rode by on a bike, listening to music, nodding to a song only he could hear. Across the street, the porch light of my neighbors, the Thompsons, turned on by itself. And I realized something simple. No one had to understand what I did. They didn't have to agree or thank me or even forgive me, because I didn't do it to be seen. I did it to stop disappearing. In the quiet, I thought about every woman like me, every mother, grandmother, sister, friend, the ones who gave and gave until the giving made them feel empty. The ones told to be thankful, to be quiet, to not make problems. To them, I say this: let the water rise. Let it carry you where you were too afraid to go. And when it finally goes down, stand tall in the sand, wet and alive. And know this: you are not the storm. You are what survives it.